Please pray with me. God, be in my mouth and in my speaking. God, be in my mind and in my thinking. God, be in our hearts and in our loving. God, be in our hands and in our doing. And may the words of my mouth and the meditations of every heart be acceptable to you, O God, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. In 1936, poet Carl Sandburg wrote an ode to hard-working Americans called "The People, Yes." I have been thinking about this passage a lot from "The People, Yes" in the last week, because now it seems like time is moving quicker, that there's more on the calendar than there used to be, and that the fall seems a little more furious than it does lovely. But back in the less developed 30s, the aspirational title of Sandburg's poem, "Yes," balances all the inherent pressures and sorrows of being human. The people, yes. The people, so often sleepy, weary, enigmatic, is a vast huddle with many units saying, I earn my living, I make enough to get by, and it takes all my time. If I had more time, I could do more for myself, and maybe for others. I could read and study and talk things over and find out about things, but it takes time. I wish I had the time. Anybody here resonate with that? How to manage the limitless bounty of God while we are here on this earth for just a little while. Today's theme, if you hadn't picked up on it yet, is abundance and scarcity. Put simply, very simply, abundance is yes, scarcity, no. Scarcity grips tightly, abundance makes it rain. I've always wanted to do that in sermons. Scarcity thinking is an outgrowth of natural fear, while abundance mentality is a choice to practice a kind of holy hope that goes against everything the world is teaching. Abundance thinking is a bit lofty and requires faith, I'll just warn you. Scarcity is what we become when our basest fears and shortcomings are in the forefront. But faith in God, who is beyond anything we can dream of, requires faith in things we cannot see yet. Confidence in that which is not yet revealed, and participation in the ongoing creation, rather than condemning love from outside the tribe. For the sake of clarity, I'm peeling only a couple of layers of this enormous onion, and I won't get into much of the gray area that resides between the comfortable shackles of fear and the scary liberation of yes. See if you agree with this interpretation of today's reading from Thomas Bohachi. He says, the parable of the vineyard demonstrates that in God's realm, all are to be treated the same. Jesus compares God to a householder who treats all employees equally, even though they have different levels of seniority and have performed differently. Jesus indicts the elites who control the majority of the wealth and material possessions, while those who are in the most numerous have the least. Moreover, God, like the householder, urges us human beings not to begrudge each other the bounty of God's reign, where there is enough for everyone. There always has been enough and there will be. Now, this is based in liberation theology. Liberation theology is often disparaged as baptized Marxism, one of my favorite epithets ever, because liberation theology focuses on the egalitarianism and the aspects of the gospel, like the decommodification of grace, which is at the heart of this parable. The last ones on the job are paid the same as the first ones, who've been toiling out in the hot sun all day. And boy, the first ones get pretty mad about that. In the ancient Koine Greek, the landowner actually says in verse 14, "Are you really giving me the evil eye because I'm good? Are you seriously criticizing me because I'm generous? Am I not allowed to do what I choose with what belongs to me? Are you envious of my generosity?" Here, Jesus goes deeper than equality, I think, as he reveals God's predilection for the needy. God's practice of unconditional grace and forgiveness, unearned love, infinite abundance, always more than enough. The shepherd that supplies our needs. The amazing grace that saves wretches like me. I once was bound, but now I'm free. I can't earn that. I can only accept it. God's extravagant, reckless grace is not a commodity to be inventoried or quantified. Equal treatment and grace. Some are the layers of this lesson. The next layer is a little tougher because it calls out something which is a scandal. Scarcity. Is there enough? Will I ever have enough? Will I ever save enough? Will there be enough time? There's never enough time. Have I saved enough? Oh, that commercial, I will never be right with that ribbon that goes into infinity that I'm supposed to save by the time I'm 65. That will never happen. Here is another parable, a faithful parable that addresses the concerns and the behaviors of the day laborers in the vineyard who complained that the vineyard's owners' abundant generosity had actually harmed them. They are working a trick that is very popular today, attempting to identify as a victim. I'm speaking of the cult of self-glorified victimhood. There are real victims in the world, as in the Caribbean today, as in Mexico. But those who are well off and safe and fed. To claim victimhood is sometimes a stretch. And it fuels everything from willful fragility to, I'm sorry, our trash-talking president this week. These are the words of Henry Nouwen, who is a prophet, turns out, because he wrote these words in 1998, before he died. He puts it this way. Once there was a group of people who surveyed the resources of the world and said to each other, how can we be sure that we have enough in hard times? We want to survive, whatever happens. Let us start collecting food and knowledge so that we are safe and secure when a crisis comes. So they started hoarding so much and so eagerly that other people protested and said, you have much more than you need. Well, we don't have enough to survive. Give us part of what you have. But the fearful hoarders said, no. We need to keep this in case of an emergency, in case things go bad for us, in case our lives are threatened. But the others said, we're dying now. Please give us food and materials and knowledge to survive. We can't wait. We need it now. Then the fearful hoarders became even more fearful, afraid that the poor and hungry would attack them. So they said to one another, let us build walls around our wealth, so that no stranger can take it from us. They started erecting walls so high that they could not even see anymore, whether their enemies were outside the walls or not. As their fear increased, they told one another, "Our enemies have become so numerous that they may be able to tear down this walls. So our walls are not strong enough to keep them away. We need to put explosives and barbed wire on top of these walls so that nobody will dare to try to come close to us." But instead of feeling safe, instead of feeling secure behind their armed walls, they found themselves trapped in a prison they had built with fear. It's hard not to hear about the DACA debate. Dreamers, children of undocumented immigrants who, in 6 months, we say we will start deporting to countries strange to them, into cultures unknown to them. And the argument is true. Perhaps they didn't follow the rules. Well, here's the twist. In today's parable, God doesn't either. God says the first shall be last, and the last shall be first. Everybody gets in. The same kingdom. That's what God is talking about, that we as Christians are called to nurture and grow and love and serve. There is only welcome with God. No bitterness, no condemnation. Welcome. So this week you should have received that communication from Elders Stephanie G. and Scott Nagelson, our Faith in Action team, asking this church to consider the sanctuary church movement. This would mean several things, the simplest being just a public statement that we are here to stand by. For example, the dozens of immigrant nannies who bring the 100+ children to our playgroup every Wednesday morning. It would mean that undocumented people have documented friends in the church. The objections are obvious. They didn't follow the rules. There isn't enough resources to keep up with all this. We don't have enough time, and the other things we're doing will suffer. We don't have enough money. My reply is the words of the landowner. Are you seriously giving me the evil eye for wanting to help children? Calvary, shall we help the first by making the last welcome? Or shall we recoil? It's really comfortable in the prison of fear. I have lived there a long time. It's comfortable to say that we can't afford something in San Francisco in 2017 in this country. To say we can't afford to serve the community is disingenuous, and I don't know what it's about. I know somebody is wondering how in the world is this sermon supposed to bless me when it feels like Victor's just judging me up one side and down the other. To that question, I say this: helping people is the only thing that saves me from myself. Helping people. It saves me from apathy. It develops empathy. And it even helps me move through my grief. I know that sounds hard to believe, but others have experienced the same thing. Helping somebody while I'm grieving, and I suddenly feel like I'm whole again, or at least more whole than I was. It takes time, and some other things that seem really important will be screaming on the sidelines for attention while you're doing it. But that's why we've tried to make it easy today with the Faith in Action volunteering fair, and even an activity we can all do together in just a little bit of time, packing sacks of food for our hungry neighbors. This song saved me. It's by Church of Scotland minister John L. Bell. The first two verses are pretty much what I think most of the time. The third verse, he says, is God speaking to the church. Then I invite you to join me on the fourth verse.
If only I had time, I'm sure my life would be mine for you. All my energy and love I'd summon up and move for you. As your word would let me know, ponder and to know for you, my God. Time, if only I had time, I'm sure my life would rhyme for you. Every voice would make my life to rejoice for you. As your will would fill my mind, all smaller thoughts would soon be left behind for you. For you. Time, oh yes, you have the time, for all the time is mine, says God. As is music, as is dance, and all that hearts and hands applaud. You are absolutely free to end delay, to give yourself to me. Yes, oh help me to say yes with all that I possess, my God. With my dreams and with my praise, and all my secret ways, my God. Let my life and my beloved, and my obedience offered up to God. Amen.